as many as you can. Okay, Jeff, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome everyone. I have some fond memories of being on the other side of this last year, and many global events going back to 2017. These kind of hackathons are really the lifeblood of the industry. And so much innovation comes out of them, and I think even more so with these long form ones where there's time to go beyond a proof of concept and really make something magical. This is an especially exciting time at Balancer. We just released our long-awaited version 2. And at this point, all the core pieces of the architecture are in place, and we're kind of in the fun, exploratory, let's realize the potential for this thing phase. And I'm certainly excited. So the plan today is spend a good bit of time introducing Balancer V2, explaining the core features, how it's different from V1 and other AMMs. And then I'll use some graphics to show the architecture interfaces, just skimming over it, given the time constraints, but enough to give you a good feel. And then I'll talk about the current state of development and give you some suggestions for interesting hacks, and wrap up with a list of resources to help you get started building on Balancer V2. So talk a bit about what Balancer V2 is. It's, as we know, ETHGlobal tracks a full range of participants. Some people might be very familiar with V1. Other people have never heard of an AMM. So essentially, it's an AMM, automated market maker, with liquidity pools. So you can do two things. You can trade tokens, right, with low slippage on the DEX, and you can invest in liquidity pools to earn trading fees and mining incentives. So Balancer V1 that launched last year in 2020 is a product. So it's a very successful one, does the job well, had over 2 billion in TBL, but the architecture is somewhat limited. So you can never have more than 8 tokens in a pool. Smart pools have to be implemented as wrappers on the core pools, because we couldn't change the core pools. And that means things happen at different levels and don't know about each other. And tokens are stored in pools. That means trades require token transfers. And then when you add in smart pools and proxies, and you've got a lot of transferring going on, and that adds up. And in contrast to the V1 product, Balancer V2 is a platform. It's flexible, user-friendly, and it's got many features designed to promote use by our partners and aggregators, and things like smart wallets. So in the main thing, in V2, you're not limited to existing pool designs. V1 addressed this by being customizable. With smart pools, you could choose the level of control and trust. But V2 goes beyond that and is fully extensible. You can inherit, mix in contracts at different levels, meet your needs without duplication. And gas efficiency was also a really important focus of development. It's what we learned from V1, UX design, gas efficiency. In V2, both of those are completely overhauled. We can do swaps under 80K of gas in some really favorable circumstances. And we made everything simple. So it might seem that goal is opposed to the other goals, but it isn't really. To paraphrase Einstein, we made it as simple as it could be, but no simpler. It's still complex in some ways. The interface itself is very clean, sparse. The arguments can get a little hairy. That's the price you pay for having something generic and extensive. So for instance, the vault wraps and unwraps natively. So the UI doesn't have to. You can join and exit pools with any combination of tokens. So if you want to join a 5-token pool and you only have 3 of them, in V1, you would have had to pick one or go swap through all the other ones and calculate the amounts, and you'd have dust left over. V2, you got 3 tokens, you join the 3 tokens, and you're done. And the interface is much cleaner. There's no clutter or unnecessary information. So it's really an AMM launchpad, a rapid application development platform for AMMs. And it's designed to allow people to innovate in the space without worrying about the details, because Balancer has done all the heavy lifting, right? You have the token storage, accounting, security, and the vault and core contracts that can't change. And then what can change is everything else. You don't need to fork the protocol, right? As long as you conform to the minimal vault interface, you can write your own pool, write your own asset manager, write your own flash loan. So we expect a Cambrian explosion of new designs. And this guy's a little hidden. This is my favorite little Burgess Hill buddy I use to illustrate this. So it's an exciting time. So here's the current status. We deployed the contracts in late April as the vault core pools documentation, give people a little head, time to prepare and get their code ready. Then the Oracle pools came out. Then public UI launched in May. This month we have stable pools and hopefully maybe the first smart pools and asset managers, TBD. And generally we're continuously developing, and there'll be a continuous incremental rollout of new features over time. And from us and others. And COVID testnet is fully, well, everything's fully deploying COVID. That's the contract. Seed pools really for the UI, subject, everything. So it can really be used to test extensively. So what does it look like here? So at the center is the vault. Is this blocked by the, you can see the full graphic?
Yeah.
The top right is blocked by your face.
All right. Okay, it's not that important. I guess that just says pool contracts. So at the center of the vault, it's one big contract holds all the tokens. And this makes it extremely gas efficient. So you can do swaps between 20 pools and you only transfer token deltas at the end. And with some mechanisms, not even that. And all calls are made right on the vault. So no proxy, you just approve your tokens once and you can do anything in the protocol. That's trading, investing, and banking, as I call it. You essentially have a personal wallet inside the vault, and you can use that to avoid token transfers and lower your costs. And this shady looking character here can do flash loans and flash loans. So the pools are still, this says pool contracts. So the pools are still deployed contracts, but the difference is they only hold the logic, right, not the tokens. They're represented in the vault as data structures, and their balances, you see here, are represented in a way that natively allows for capital efficiency. So you have a cash balance, which is the actual balance of tokens that are present in the vault, and then the managed balance, which are tokens that can be removed from the vault by the asset manager for various things, yield farming, voting, whatever you write the asset manager to do. But the vault acts as though they're still there. So you still have all the benefits of low slippage and high liquidity with the capital efficiency. And here's kind of the text advantage of what I described. Expanding on it just a little bit, we have pool specializations. When you make a pool, that's another kind of space optimization. So, like if the pool only has 2 tokens, you can store them differently. You can store all the balances in one slot, so you only do one read and write for all the tokens. That sort of thing. And has a lot of features for aggregated smart wallets, including relayers, special permission contracts that can make certain calls according to governance and users, and use allowances granted to the vault and so on. And you could do $1 billion flash loans as long as you pay it back. You get that. So I'm going to get a little hand wavy now in the interest of time. This is just kind of going over the interfaces that are available in features and how you would use these if you want to do something, write a product that uses the vault or that uses the pools or makes a new pool. So swaps is one of the main functionalities. You can do a batch swap, which is like a multi-hop. Each individual swap is with one pool where one token balance increases and one decreases. But you could string all those together and do a multi-hop as much as you want. And again, because everything's in the vault, everything stays in the vault, it's all very gas efficient. And there's also a optimized single swap. If you know for sure that there's only one pool, you can just directly swap against that pool, and that's even more gas efficient. And we also have this feature called the query batch swap. So that is like a simulator or a dry run. Runs the exact same code as the swap. So there's no duplication. Literally runs the same code, but it reverts right at the end with the encoded data. So you can see exactly what will happen, exactly what the token balances will be. And this is a great help for users of it. At the pool level, you make a new pool, you register it. So this is basically you're creating that data structure inside the vault and generating a encoded pool ID that you use on all the API calls. And then you also say, each pool has to say which tokens can be in that pool. And then you can interrogate information about the pool. What's the ID? What are the tokens? What's going on with the tokens? What are their balances? They have asset managers, which asset manager, all that. And then you can do, of course, the adding and removing liquidity operations. These are very generic. They have, for instance, you could join a pool by pulling the pool token. You could join the pool and you want to join it with 3 tokens. It's, even though it's a 5-token pool, and you want to pull you want to pull the tokens from the user balance of the sender, and you want to send the BPT to the external receiver account, right? You can do that. And in the asset manager, there's only one call, but again, it's one of these structures where it's, you pass it a bunch of operations, and you can deposit, you can withdraw, and you can transfer. And then there's other similar vault functions. With the user balances, you can interrogate what's somebody's user balance. And then the managers, very similar to the asset manager, you can manage your internal balances. So you can deposit, withdraw, and transfer. This could be used by aggregators. If you had a custodial solution or some sort of smart wallet that had permission, you could send, transfer things between users. You can do, there's the flash loan interface. Which is very simple. You're passing it a contract to receive the flash loan. And then protocol fees. The protocol fees are separated into a separate contract outside the vault. You can here ask what that contract is and ask about the fees. And then there's a permission function. Of course, there are permission functions to set them. And then there's an emergency stoppage. So that is a permission through governance. That is a safety feature on the vault in all new pool types, where for the first 3 months, if we were to have a critical security incident, we could just halt everything, except it would freeze the vault, and you couldn't do anything except withdraw. And that period lasts until, I think, mid next month, after which it becomes fully permissionless. So that's that. And yeah, so as I alluded to, V2 introduces some swap fees or some protocol fees. There are 2 kinds. They're currently 0, but they could be activated by governance. There's a swap fee and a flash loan fee. The swap fee is a percentage of the pool fee. So if the pool swap fee were 1% and the protocol swap fee were also 1%, the total would be 1.01. And they could be very low. And these are also, there are hard coded limits on these, as part of the threat model, as a safety feature. If governance were to be compromised somehow, it's not possible to set the fees to 100% or something. This is a safety feature. And just to expand a bit on how extensibility and how would you go about making a new pool or using this. So as an example of how we've implemented this, the weighted pool is the main kind of pool we have. So that's a pool with 2 to 8 tokens with fixed weights. It's very similar to V1. It has weighted math, which is similar to the V1 price curve. So there's this base weighted pool class, which abstracts all the actual functions, so the price curve calculations. And it just, all those functions need to interrogate, what are the weights? So at that level, it's virtual and just has the logic. And those are implemented in the weighted pool very simply because they're fixed. It just reads them right from the fixed storage or from the fixed immutables. Whereas if you wanted to make a pool, essentially a liquidity bootstrapping pool that has mutable weight storage, then you would just override those get weight functions and calculate the weights, or read them from storage, or go to an oracle, or do whatever you want to do. So if you wanted to make a new pool type which had mutable weights, you could simply derive from base weighted pool, and you would have all the stuff above it, reuse all that for free, and you have a very small implementation. The base layers do all the hard stuff for you, all the invariant price curve. You don't want to have to duplicate that. It's already pre-done, pre-audited. things like tokens decimal scaling. If you didn't use this whole mechanism, you would have to do all that yourself. Because that's a problem, with on V1 to some degree, when you have different decimal tokens, there can be issues with minimum balances and decimals. V2 kind of avoids all that. All the IO is with native token decimals, but the pools convert it to full 18 decimal precision for all the calculations, and then it scales it back. When it outputs the value, so it handles all that. So that's just a concrete example of that mix-in kind of override architecture I described before. So here's where we are in development, or what's currently going on in development, right? I'm working on the liquidity bootstrapping pool, V2 version, which is completely different. In this case, it's a specific pool. In V1, it's a kind of a instantiation or a particular use case of the general configurable rights pool. In V2, it's its own thing. But there also, I think, will be a CRP-like thing on V2 that I'm working on too. We've got people working on asset managers. AVA is probably the first one. So, this is where you can join a pool a certain way and have the AVA tokens or the DAI, doing yield farming in the background, earning a yield for the pool in addition to the fees and mining. You have great capital efficiency, and maybe others are in the pipeline as well. All kinds of third-party pools are being made. There's one that does implements a yield curve, so a totally different price curve. There's all kinds of dynamic weight ones of various types, and I'm sure there's some we don't even know about. So quickly go into the prizes. I'm sure you're all interested in that. Kept it simple, just two, 8,000 first, 4,000 second. There are no categories. Like V2 itself, it is unconstrained, limited by your imagination. However, we do have some ideas of what might be promising areas of research. For instance, asset managers. So you could, layer 2 is a big push with everyone, including us. We are deploying on Polygon very soon, and I believe also Arbitrum and also XDAI, and it's going to be a big focus this year for everyone. So a unique thing about Balancer is we could leverage this with this asset management mechanism. So you could have an asset manager that instead of doing something on level 1, like putting it on like the AVA pool works entirely on level 1, you could have something, use a bridge or put some of his tokens on level 2. Also, there's many arbitrage spot opportunities here. You can do what are called flash swaps, where you have using internal balances for very cheap gas, and you can have no tokens in. So you see a arbitrage opportunity and you just take tokens out. I think that has the potential to make the markets in V2 very efficient. Another area is the migration. So as part of the UI release, there's a migration tool. So when we first launched the Oracle pools, we made about 30 seed pools, Oracle seed pools and these are supposed to be, these are the highest liquidity pairs. I think there's over 250 million or so in there now. And those are the targets. So we're encouraging people to kind of concentrate liquidity on those pools. So the migration tool supports just a subset. So it's only 2 token pools, and it's only 2 token pools that are similar to one of those seed targets. All right, so, but what about all the other pools, right? There's a ton of other V1 pools, most of which could be migrated in some form. There's some that can't, but most of them can. So you could extend this. What if you have a 2 token pool that doesn't have an equivalent? What if you have a 5 token pool or 8 token pool? Maybe, and also, what if you have liquidity on other AMM platforms? that you might get a better API on if you could migrate to Balancer. So it could calculate all these things and suggest different migration paths. So it might say, take this 8 token pool and take this, Uniswap one and put this one here and divide this 8 token pool into these 4 2 token pools on V2. And it could just have a proxy or some sort of thing and do it all for you with 1 or 2 clicks. That would be amazing. The other thing is around asset management, portfolio management. You could make a relayer, one of these privileged or permission contracts that actively manages portfolio. So for instance, it could move between pools. Say you're invested in 4 or 5 different pools. It could, using the internal balances, you could withdraw from one into your internal balance and then join another one from your internal balance. So you're not transferring any tokens, but you're moving things in between your investments within the vault to capture a better APY. And more ambitiously, you could even create a new set of pools that actually change the weights algorithmically. And it could do that as well as a custodian. But of course, sky's the limit. We're happy to be surprised. Surprises. And I'm doing pretty long time. It's about exactly 20 minutes. So finally, here are the resources. The main point of contact would be Discord. And the best thing would be to go onto the ETHGlobal Discord when it's hackathon related, rather than going on the general support, because it's going to be pretty spread thin otherwise. So I encourage everyone to go to the sponsor. I believe that's the right sponsor Balancer channel on the ETHGlobal Discord. And then here are some, here's a Medium article that kind of describes here's the code. Everything is in one big monorepo. It is under active development. Master is the current release branch. There are also tags because it's diverged quite a bit from what we deployed originally. You can always recover that with the V1 tag, or the release 1 tag. And then here are some guides from the docs.balancer.py is the documentation, and here's some handy links to specific parts of that. And then also into the describing the APIs. And we have a pool creation package in Python. It's in the docs how to do it, but it's kind of high level because everyone has a different dev environment. And it's pretty hard to make a working script. So the Python thing is intended to be just run it out of the box, create a pool with a configuration, and it's a work in progress. It's out there now. We'll continue to develop it through the hackathon. It should support all the pool types fairly soon. It doesn't now, but give that a try because otherwise it's a little onerous. So that's all I had for the formal presentation. It's 4:20. That was exactly on time. So I guess I can go to the chat. See what we have here. Should I stop sharing? Let's see.
No, I still see your slides. There you go. Now you stopped.
Okay, let's look at this. Non-tradable tokens. Okay, well, the first one, the easy one there, plans to deploy in Matic and XDAI, yes and yes. In fact, it may even, so the difficulty is, deploying on Polygon, it's more than just, you can deploy the contracts, but that's not a problem, but it's not very useful if all you do is deploy the contracts. I mean, I deployed V1 on Matic, on Mumbai actually. But it's not very useful if you don't have the UI and you don't have the subgraph and you don't have all the other pieces, right? Also, we have the whole governance piece, right? So we need to have a multi-sig for the authorizer for all. So that was a bit of the delay on Polygon, was to get we needed to get the signers on the multi-sig. Hopefully, people that, and we're still kind of recruiting. We'd like people that are related to the Polygon to be signers on the multi-sig. I think that's all resolved. We have at least a preliminary enough to actually do it. And I believe we're deploying extremely soon, within days, I would imagine, on Polygon. And yeah, and you would also need to, I mean, we'd also need to not only deploy the vault and the architecture, but also actually put pools there, actually put liquidity on there. Otherwise, you can't do much with it, right? So yes, that's. But I do think Polygon will be first. They are an important partner. Looking at else here, I'm not sure I understand this pool of non-tradable tokens. I mean, I can say generally, you can, a pool is an arbitrary contract. You actually, you actually don't even need to use anything. You could write a completely, a contract from scratch if you wanted to. You don't have to reuse really anything as long as you, talk to the vault properly. A pool is an arbitrary contract. There are just, there's a whole infrastructure there that you can reuse for convenience. So things like pool tokenization, we have a Balancer pool token that is the BPT that the core pools all inherit. So that is the BPT contract. But the vault doesn't know anything about BPTs. So you don't need to use that. You could have a pool that doesn't even do tokenization or does tokenization completely differently and doesn't use BPTs at all. You could do, it doesn't even need to have tokens, I suppose. Yeah, there's really no limit to what you can do as long as you meet the minimal vault interface. Okay. Simple example. I think there is. I have to check. Some of the docs have been changing lately. We will be adding. I mean, there are some examples. We will be adding more. I think even the Python package has some examples. Also you can, I mean, the repo has things that are in development. So you can, look at those. There's a lot of documentation in the code that tells you, hey, implement this to do this, implement that to do that. But we also could, if it's useful to expand upon that, if there's anything else people would like to see, I'd be happy to write that. We're always extending the docs. I do a lot of doc writing. So happy to extend the docs as needed. There are lots of people working on custom pools, for concentrated liquidity pools. That'd be another kind of example. I mean, the two token pool is sort of like that. I mean, we have a weighted math and stable math. So, all those, all the pools currently use those maths, but it's not constraining. You could make another math library with different math and then use that instead. Right. So the question here is, if there were a token USDC pool, is there a way to tap into the USDC, like use it as part of an AVA loan? Well, yes, that's the AVA asset manager, which is not released yet, but that is exactly the sort of thing that the AVA asset manager would do. So you would join the pool with USDC and specify that you want to use the AVA asset manager, and then with an 80% allocation, and then it would take those tokens and farm them out for you on AVA. There's a whole elaborate kind of staking. It's related to liquidity mining and staking. This is all getting rolled out. It's TBD, but a lot of this is there's so much going on. I didn't list everything. But there's a lot of stuff going on with AVA and staking and mining earnings distributions that is that we'll have details on when that gets closer to release.
All right, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we are kind of back to back on workshops today. Thank you so much, Jeff, for this really amazing workshop. And thank you to Balancer for sponsoring HackMoney this year. And yeah, if you guys have any extra questions or would like to talk to Jeff or people from Balancer, make sure you guys check out that Discord channel.